Good morning to everyone out there, Sawubona. And while I might not see you all today, I do have the privilege of actually having a panelist with me today. I'd like to welcome Francois du Toit from Propulsion. He'll be my guest or my panelist with me today as we dive down into the third and final webinar for this year in terms of the series around the digital lowdown and unpacking your tech stack. Just a short welcome, Francois.
Thank you very much, Michael. Good morning, everyone. It's awesome to be with you on this beautiful Thursday. So yeah, looking forward to a good conversation.
Awesome. So today, Francois and I will dive a little bit into, I'll do a short recap in terms of the tech stack and where we've come through for this year. We'll also start unpacking just a little bit of Francois's journey in terms of where he was being in the advisory space and then in the advisor space and then moving into where he has Propulsion now. But Francois has a massive sort of reach in terms of a network that he connects with and presents at. So we look forward to some of the insights that he'll be sharing today. I'll also take you a little bit behind the scenes of some of the stuff that we've done as, in terms of our transition from a legacy platform into new, more digital tech space. And then we'll dive a little bit into the general regulation and compliance stuff. And then Francois and I will just have a little bit of a chat around the future outlook, where we sort of see things going. But yeah, let's sort of kick into it. So just bring up some of the share stuff. As always, when you have too many things open, then you... So yeah, so as mentioned, today we are just going to recap. I'm going to show you that lovely diagram that we keep talking about. We'll touch a bit on Francois's journey, our journey, and then also just talk a bit more about regulations, because I think it's in the age of AI and the industrial revolution, as you'd see in the media, and then also sort of looking at that future outlook, and then we'll sort of have a Q&A session and hopefully tackle some of your questions as they come along. So I'm sure you all recall this sort of diagram that I've been presenting through the year. And I think the key part about this is also it's not so much about, if you started in January this year and you've made 5% change in some way or other, that's still 5% better off from where you were at the beginning of the year. And I think it's sort of key to keep at the back of your mind in terms of how you're approaching anything around tech, because it is your enabler, really, more than anything. It's we see it everywhere in our mobile devices. We've got banking. We can pay for banking with a simple click of our phones these days. You don't even need physical bank cards so much anymore. And I think it's as much as we say, the younger generation, they're going to have it all in their mobile devices. I think many of us already are out there with smartwatches, tapping, using it on your train or using it just to pay for a cup of coffee. So in some way or other, anyone and everyone, whether you're the younger generation or whether you're older, even your retired people. I've seen retired people on the sports fields watching their grandkids. They tap in away and they've become accustomed to these technologies. So, that gets you thinking okay, well, what does my technology stack look like? How am I supporting my clients or my business and, those that are on the inside of my business and the outside? So if you're still here, I don't think you should panic in any shape or form. I think it's just key to sort of say, where am I going to start? Where's my 5% start? Where do I want to be by March next year? And go for it, and sort of just embrace it as you go along. Just in terms of setting some of the scene before I jump over to Francois, I think just the key for us, and I'll dive a little bit more into it when I get to our journey. We as a platform, I think if you think about this, it's Francois comes from an experience advice space. I come from an experience platform back-end space. And here we are fostering some sort of relationship where we are now providing some sort of transaction between ourselves. We are connecting. We've got different forms of technology. We've used Zoom today. to help us. And I think, that's sort of like how we sort of embrace that concept of what is a platform in our world. But what I want to do is I want to sort of jump over to Francois now, and sort of, Francois, yeah, just to sort of give us a little bit of your world and how you've seen things evolve in your space.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, there's been quite a change in some of the ways that I've approached some of this, because I am a forever optimist and I love technology more than I should. So I'm the guy that sees all the possibilities and hardly ever look at any of the risks or any of the what are we doing and what could this mean. Like, I don't overthink these things. That changed in the last 6 months. I'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, I've been around now for 30 years, a little bit more than 30 years. I started back in 94 in financial services. So it's been a journey, and mostly on the independent advice side is where I spent most of my career as a broker consultant in management, and also tried my hand at being a financial advisor, gave it a good go, but also quickly realized that's not really my thing. And there's many reasons for it, which I sort of found out. But if I look at everything that's happening currently from not just now, right, from 2004 when FACE came about, and when all of the fit and proper requirements came about, and all of the reporting came about, and all of that, and suddenly we had to do things that we didn't do before, or at the very least keep record of those things and then report that we are doing those things. We never had to do that. And now with Kofi coming, and Kofi and AI are sort of put in the same box because nobody wants to talk about it anymore, but we're all over it.
Yes.
But the thing that I'm definitely seeing is, if you look at what the regulators around the world are trying to do, it's not only South Africa, like around the world. I can't really see us weathering the storm, and it doesn't matter where you find yourself. So whether you're in a tight space, or whether you're completely independent, or you're with a bigger independent FSP, it doesn't really matter. That business, the only way that they can do this is with technology, and now with AI mixed into it. And that's sort of where I see these things are going. But also, even though, like yesterday, we were having a discussion with someone, and we said, well, they asked if something was possible. And I said, well, it's absolutely possible. But the question isn't if AI can do this for me. It's like, should AI be doing this for me? And that's probably the bigger question around that. But I can't see. And the one thing I want to say before I hand back to you is that from a technology point of view, back in the day, we had these excuses, like, I'm 50, I'm 50 now, and I can't imagine somebody 50 telling me like they before computers. It just doesn't compute for me anymore. But back in the day, Michael, you and I had to learn the language of the computer, right? And we had to learn,
Yes.
and it is difficult. It's not a natural, intuitive thing.
Yes.
But today, that excuse is gone, because I can literally sit here, press a button, and speak to the computer like I'm speaking to you, and it will speak back to me like I'm speaking to it.
Yes.
And it will understand exactly what it is that I want and go off and do it. And I think that's the important part, that we need to realize the excuses are gone. We can do this easily, and we should. But yeah, so let me first hand back to you.
Yeah. No, and just to jump on that Francois, that I like to ask, like, what problem are we trying to solve? And have we exhausted all sort of paths before we dive into an AI world? Because I think, the more and more I watch of these massive, seriously intelligent professors and students of AI, you learn more and more that they also not quite sure of where this ends and what this can do. I think there's a lot that sort of motivate you to get into it. And I think for myself personally, it's been about finding what does this solve for us in our business? How do we find little ways that we can use this or introduce this, but also at the same time ensuring everybody has access to it. I think for me, the biggest example is that where previously there was a lot of licensed technology. You needed to pay a license, you needed to pay some sort of either subscription model, or you needed to have enterprise license, which gave you X amount of users. And those users had to be trained, and they had to be, sort of upskilled in terms of the tech. AI was just there as a website. it just opened up. And yes, they have subscription models, and yes, we know that in some way or other they're going to have to make money. I think recently the whole OpenAI, NVIDIA, snake eat snake, snake eat tail picture always comes to mind. But I don't think it's going to go away. It might be a bubble that's going to burst in some shape or other. But I think, it's key to sort of like just embrace it and go and see what problem do you need to solve, and could AI solve it for you, or engage with your service providers. I think for me, it's always about like, how do you collaborate with your service providers? How do you support each other? And can you ask that questions? Do you have that open, direct relationship? I mean, I think we certainly like to invite advisors into our space and have a conversation. You might not be a user of our platform, and you might never be, but we're always happy to open up that discussions and see where things go and how we can help. Francois, just some of your, sorry, you were going to say something. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, man. No, I just want to say, I think it's important to understand where AI fits into the picture. And here's a massive thing. And look, we've been talking around this in different ways over the years. The problem hasn't shifted because people still start with a tool. Like, what can this do?
Yeah.
And then try and figure out the use case instead of starting off with what is the problem I'm trying to solve, as you rightly said.
Yeah.
So what I'm finding in practice in my own business, never mind all the advisors that we speak to, but in our own business as well, is that it's not usually that you don't have the right tool. It's not that you don't have the right technology. It's not like we frame it as such. But what I find the real thing is that either we don't know what the problem is and what good looks like. And then secondly, it's often a process problem and not a tool problem. So it's often that your process isn't running well or mapped out or clear. And now you're trying to find something that will give you a process that you can follow. And that's the biggest mistake that we all make. I just had a long conversation yesterday. We met with some people for things we want to do at Propulsion. And also my question was like, okay, but is it because of the tool we're using, or is it because we're not following the process? Like, which one is it? Because it's not necessarily the tool. I always tell people, like, the best CRM, there is a best CRM. It's the one you're using because you already have it. You already have data on there. All we need to understand is, like, what is the processes that we need to drive or want to drive through those CRMs as one of the examples. And AI is not a silver bullet. Like, everybody thinks AI is here to save you from all of the administration, because like we do lots of surveys, and then also whenever I go and speak, usually at conferences or sort of sessions where they bring people together, I usually give them a list of questions for the people who are attending, for them to answer, so I can get a sense of who they are and what their challenges are, etc. Now, I've spoken at events, but I've spoken to new advisors. I've spoken to top advisors in whatever that criteria is at businesses. And you know what the funny thing is? They all have exactly the same problems. So it's not a money problem. It's not a I'm new problem. It is the admin is killing everyone. And the only way that we can really make that, and often we think about ourselves as the advisor or the planner, when we should be thinking about our back offices and giving them tools and training and things to make their life easier. We often look for our own shiniest tools, which I don't think is the best place to focus.
Yeah, and I think sometimes on that, Francois, like when you become obsessed with tools, for lack of a better word, you all of a sudden you end up having 20 tools doing 20 different things when you could have 5 doing all 20 things in some sort of collaboration. And I think that's sort of like why we went on this journey of, like, take that moment to evaluate your tech stack. In the last session, I presented sort of like, well, you don't need AI to solve for it, but use it as a consultant. Tell it, this is the tools I have, and say, what did I do? Why would I use this? I want to use this better. And also, as you rightly said, like your ops admin processes, maybe give it to them. Maybe let them run it as a little project. And I get it. I can appreciate time is massive. Like, like everyone's possibly stretched. As you mentioned, Kofi's coming down the line. You've got all this other tech, like running around. But if you don't also take that step back to try and sort of like evaluate and then say, what are we going to do over the next 6-12 months? You're just going to blink and you're going to be in the same position where you are today in 12 months time.
Yeah, and don't try and change everything at once. Just choose one thing to
Yes.
focus on, because you get overwhelmed very easily. And then you go like,
Yeah.
stuff it, let's just leave it. And that's not helpful. So just choose that one thing. And the other thing I can quickly add, Michael, is that in most cases, when we speak to advisors and you ask them, where are the pain points? They typically default to the biggest problems that they have. So they would say, the record of advice, replacement advice record, like all that kind of stuff. And there are big pain points, and AI can absolutely save them, but they also come with the biggest risk. Okay.
Yeah.
So we downplay the value of solving the small little things that we can do, or maybe even start doing things that we wish we could have done before, but they are quick to do, they're easy to do, and we don't think that 1 minute or 5 minutes or anything like that is really useful. So I always say to people, just start small. Don't go for the big stuff, because you don't understand yet. Most people don't understand yet the implications of what they are doing and what happens during the processing part of that information being sent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Francois, on that note, so just in terms of tools and tech, what sort of like, I asked if you'd be able to showcase one or two things, just in terms of how you've embraced this world and what you found as good success stories, but also the bad side of it. Don't be afraid to show the dark, not the dark side, but just where you saw the risk, as you mentioned. It's like you've gone in, you've thrown yourself into it, and then all of a sudden you pulled your head up, and there was the compliance officer standing. What are you doing here? Yeah.
Wat dink jy gaan jy?
Yeah.
So there's just two quick things I want to show, and the one is, because this is probably the biggest and easier. Well, this is one of the biggest pain points that we can solve very easily. It does come with risk, right? Because of the type of conversations that we have, and but it is very useful if you've got all the right things in place for this. And also, I want to say something just before I get into it. The best place to use AI is inside of the tools you already use. So if your CRM offers some of these, and there are CRMs in South Africa that offer some of this stuff natively inside of their CRM, then that's the best place to use it, because they will make sure that you comply with POPI and all these other regulatory people, right? So that's the best place to start. I'm going to show you tools that we use outside of any of those systems that is available, but it's about the functionality and what's possible that I want you to sort of focus on. All right. So the first one, the biggest pain point for most people, because this takes a lot of time, is the meeting notes. So I have a meeting with a client, I make all these notes, somebody's got to type it up. Sometimes we draft an email to confirm to the client what was discussed and what's going to happen next. This is also the category of AI tools where you will find the most options at the moment. Even, like many of the platforms that have come about, and there's some of them that wants to sort of wear their way into South Africa from the UK and so on, but they are built around meeting notes. Like that's what they primarily did. And it will become more than that, but at the moment. So this is an app called Fireflies. So we prefer Fireflies. Some people love Fathom. Some likes Jump AI, some just wants to use the Teams premium, because Teams have got Microsoft Teams have got like a premium license, which I also have, which also do something sort of similar to this, but it's not quite the same. So let me just explain to you what's happening here quickly. So this is just our final speaker briefing from about, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks ago, Michael. So I thought this would be the safest thing to bring up where people, the whole world can see it. So in this particular instance, usually, I think Ben recorded this, or his meeting note taker was recording this. I usually do not switch on video to record the video, but you can. So I just wanted to show you that you can record the video, you can record the audio. And then what it does is it creates this transcript for you. And also what's nice, I've got Fred here on the side, and I can have a conversation with the transcript, basically. But I'm going to show you what I did with this. The beautiful thing about what Fireflies does is doesn't only record it and transcribe it, right? And also does Afrikaans, by the way, that it also then creates these summaries of what was said in the meeting together with timestamps, so that I want to go listen exactly what was said at that point. I can literally just click it and it'll take me to that part of the conversation. Because this has always been the biggest issue for most people. If you were recording a conversation is where do you now find that piece, that small little piece? Where do I
Yes.
find that?
Yes.
Like, and this solves that problem. You can also have, there's different summaries here. So in this case, there's a general summary. You can also, they've got some like templates and things that are set up. There's also some finance stuff here for estate check-in and review, investment review, retirement planning, tax planning, estate planning. So they have all sorts of different templates, in the sense that the prompts that create these summaries are a little bit different, a little bit more focused on that kind of conversation. Okay. But the beautiful thing is
And so
that,
what's also,
yes, yeah.
sorry, just to call out, what's quite interesting. So we use Teams internally, and we had to, we almost had to have every individual had to go and personalize their voice and image within Teams. What I see here, it looks like it picks up who's speaking and it's allocated that name, which is quite nice because now you also have who said what at what time. So that's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. So and even like, because the other thing you can do is they also have an app for your phone. So the other day I had a meeting where I recorded the whole conversation. My phone was lying there on the desk and everybody was talking. It then identifies that there are 3 different speakers in our case.
Yeah.
And I can then go, speaker 1 was Francois, speaker 2 was Kwesi, and speaker 3 was Susie. And it will then, and then it knows exactly who said what at what time, because it's able to identify that. Teams, by the way, have now got a facilitation option. There's a facilitator or something that you can
just
switch
been
on.
using
That's
that.
pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
So just know that that's available. The other important thing, and this is also something you can only see on Teams if you've got a premium license, I think, Michael, if I'm not mistaken,
that's correct.
Is the stats. Because somebody was saying at the Money Maestros conference, somebody was saying, you know what, record your meetings, go back, listen to them, and hear how much you speak versus how much the client speaks. So here, I can just see how much each participant spoke. So here on the left-hand side,
looks like I dominated there,
you
Francois.
dominated, sir. You dominated, but with good reason, right? You're the leader here. So I spoke 37% of the time, and Jordan spoke 10% of the time. But you can easily see. But you can also see the sentiment: neutral, positive, negative. I don't know what 5% things we were negative about, but
don't scroll down. Don't scroll down.
Yeah. So, but these are the kinds of things that you can do, and you can customize it in a lot of other ways. But I do want to show you just quickly. So this is now cool, obviously, right? So I can easily click here on the copy button, and I can copy the entire summary. I can copy the entire, rather download the thing. So if I was to go to, I can't remember now exactly where I did this. This now looks different on my Windows machine than my Mac. Let me see quickly. I think it's here. Go. So there's download. So I can also download everything. So the audio, the video, the transcript, the summary, all of that. And which is exactly what I did with this, because we actually had 2 meetings about this, right? So this is now cool. But now if you are having multiple meetings with somebody and there's a story, like let's say I met this client and there's been 3 or 4 meetings that are all sort of related to each other, but we were building up to a specific point, okay? So what I then did was to download those 2 transcripts, just the transcripts, not the summaries, and I put it just into ChatGPT. And I then said, well, this is the webinar document that contains the transcript. So the first document, I told it what was in the first document, what was in the second document. And I said, I need to know exactly what I will be talking about and anything I need to prep before the time, right? Because I was listening to you. I wasn't making notes. I wasn't doing any of that kind of stuff. But also now I have 2 sets of meeting notes. So now I've got to go between them. And I'm like, no, let's just put everything together and just see. This was a bit on thinking mode. So I thought for 20 seconds. It would take me 20 hours. It took it 20 seconds. And then there's what I'll be talking about, the conversation between me and Michael and all of the things that we want to touch on, etc. It even gave me the format and logistics. I didn't even ask for that, but it's giving me that from the transcript. It's saying the talking points that I should prep for, like what should I be ready to talk about, etc. And this is more or less how it will run. And it even gave me a prep checklist. Like, it's crazy what this does. So you get a lot of information from this by doing this. The one concern though, this I could do because there's no private information, there's no privacy issues here, right? And also we have a business account, let me just say that. So we have a ChatGPT business account, which means we've got great security and they don't train the models and all that stuff is sorted. But the privacy side is another issue. So before you put any information, we'll probably talk about that when it gets to regulation, but like, you can do this, but you're going to have to anonymize all the information. So then you can still you will have speaker 1, speaker 2, and not have Francois and Michael, for example.
Yeah.
But there are some things to be careful about when it comes to your clients, because they are sharing very intimate information. So
Yes.
there are ways around that, but we can chat about that a bit later.
Yeah. I saw so just ChatGPT, and you're talking about the business account. I see they've recently also brought out a bit of a cheaper priced model as well. So and I think that's sort of like where a lot of these service providers have to look at, as much as, and we'll touch on it in regulation, but just as much as that it's not regionalized to Africa as a whole. Recently, the Middle East sort of had a localized AI warehouse deployed, so that gives them that comfort that it starts to regionalize, it starts to go back to things like GDPR. So in our world, we always try to align to that European POPI and GDPR and phase and the like. But now these things need to become closer and closer. I was in a presentation the other day where this team actually downloaded the model themselves and deployed it onto a local machine. And I think just on that, right, that like just shows you the power of building this out on a laptop. Like you see lots of ads of people saying someone's going to be a one-person bank and they're going to build a whole lot of AI agents to do that. I think we're still some way away from that, but it's definitely people are out there trying it. And I think that's where it becomes important to sort of just keep up to date with some of these things happening, because while AI is pushing some of those spaces, that's where people are thinking of what they can do with it. I mean, I like the story of Revolut Bank, where it started in 2015, and for those who are familiar with it, in 10 years it's grown to I think 40 or 60 million customers globally, and I don't think they run on that massive legs like a JP Morgan or Citibank, but they're up there almost punching above their weight, and a lot of it would be supplemented through technology and how they've applied that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One other thing, I just want to reiterate quickly, because I saw there was a question around Afrikaans. Fireflies does do Afrikaans. I'm thinking now, like I had a meeting in the week that was all Afrikaans, and it then transcribes it in Afrikaans. So it does do that. And it summarizes in Afrikaans and all of it. Sometimes you look at the transcript and you're like, what language is this? But it gets the summaries right. So it's quite interesting.
Yes.
But so it does do that. And then Michael, can I just, there's one other thing I just quickly want to share as well, because in most cases, everything you and I have been talking about is from an advice point of view. Running our businesses point of view, but we hardly ever look at, but what are clients doing with this right now? And that's an important point to take, because even if you go like, stay away, because in our survey that we did a couple of months ago, there were some firms who said we outlawed AI completely. And I don't know, it's because like of the risk, or whether they're afraid of it, or whatever their reason is. I don't know what the reasons are, but there was a small percentage of people, I would say small, but smaller percentage than ones who are embracing it. And they're saying no AI allowed in my business. And the admins also confirmed, because we did 2 separate surveys. And it was quite interesting to me to say that, but you can do that. It's your prerogative to do that and to say no. The other day I saw somebody comment on a Facebook post saying like, go away with your AI. Luckily not my post, but an American, also Marlu is the thing's name. So it's like similar to Fireflies. And he was saying like, go away with your AI. This is a people business. I'm like, chap, you obviously don't understand what's happening here. And I say that with the greatest of respect. It's not about you. It's not, you can view this however you want. Like what we really need to think about is, what are clients doing with this? What are they putting into AI? What are they asking AI? How are they double checking what we are sharing with them using AI? When we go to the doctor, I've been to the doctor loads this last couple of months, and you go there prepped. Like this oak is not going to tell me something that I don't know, I don't agree with. Like I want my own information, my own fact checking. And that's what's going to happen now. Exactly. They're already doing it with doctors. They're also going to do it now with you. And you're going to find more and more and more that people are going to show up and saying like, yeah, but ChatGPT says, and people sometimes got funny names for their ChatGPTs. They actually give them names. Like I know there was an old guy right in the beginning called it Chatty. Then yesterday I met with somebody who's calling their Notion AI Chili, because I assume, but whatever, right? So So I want to show you quickly just more or less what clients can easily do and what how ChatGPT then responds with this. And this is not a case of, because our natural inclination will be to defend ourselves and but that's not, it doesn't know this, it doesn't know that. That's not going to bring you anywhere, right? So we've got to sort of roll with the punches and work with it and collaborate with AI and say, well, let me show you, or whatever. Let's have a conversation about this. What did it get right? What did it miss? And why did it miss it, etc., etc. So let's find my screen here again. So I've just prepped, like, this is just a fairly simple prompt that somebody could easily come up with. And also you'll see more and more people are asking AI to write the prompt for them, and then they use the prompt. So that's the new thing that everybody's doing. Nobody wants to learn to do prompting. They just ask the AI, okay, which is dangerous, I believe. But anyway, here we go.
Yes.
So all I said is I'm 40 years old. I'm 50, but for this example, 40 years old, married, I have 2 children, age 8 and 6. I would like to start planning properly for my retirement. Please help me create a clear and realistic retirement plan. This is typically what somebody would come to you for, right? Say, I need help. This is my story. So here's what I would like help with. So help me estimate how much money I will need to retire comfortably at age 65. Show me how to work out how much I need to save each month to reach that goal, which is typically what we do, right? Help me decide what type of investments or accounts I could use, because this is how clients think as well. They don't come with all their money stories and all those things. Like, this is usually their starting point, and then we start educating them and guiding them and that kind of stuff, right? So that's the value. That's the value. Help me think about education costs for my children, possibly home loans and other long-term expenses that might affect my plan. Suggest a simple plan I can review once a year to make sure I stay on track. Please explain everything in plain language, include example numbers and tables if needed, and make it suitable for someone living in South Africa. That's the prompt. Not very
That's a
hard
very
to
key
write.
one, right? That South Africa part is very key. Like in some of my prompts, I reference any of our legislations like phase, SARS, SARB, etc., and bring it all in when you're looking at it.
So important. Provided you live in South Africa.
Correct. Yes.
So okay. So I'm just going to do this. Is in real time, by the way. I usually pre-record these things, but this is sort of in real time. I'm not using a thinking model. I'm just using the straightforward GPT-5 model, and off it goes, and it will just go and write this whole plan, right? So of course it's going to say great decision, and that's the problem with these LLM models, is they are very motivational, inspirational, and you know, every time you have an idea, it's a great idea, and it's the best idea you could have had, and it works, and these are the reasons why it works. Okay, anyway, so estimate how much you will need at retirement. You're 40, 65, so you have 25 more years. A common guideline is that you will need about 70 to 80% of your current monthly income to maintain your lifestyle in retirement. So there's an example. So it gives them a guide, right? I could have prompted it and say, ask me all the questions to obtain all the information you need to give me a detailed plan. I could have done that as well, and it would actually take me through a list of questions.
Yes.
I could even use something like advanced voice mode and have a conversation like I would with an advisor if I wanted to. So, but anyway, so it'll give you all that information. So by the time you retire, you may need about 257,000. So that's increased your 60,000 with inflation, whatever it assumed for that. But anyway, I mean, I'm not going to go through this whole thing. We're going to be here the whole day. But it tells me, like, that's what I need. Work out how much you need to save. I'm not looking at whether this is correct or not, because it does get it right most of the time, but I've also found where sometimes it doesn't. But it doesn't matter, because this is what clients are going to look at. There's the future value calculations, investment and account options. There's your RA, explains all of the things. Tax-free savings explains all of the things, right? Got it right. Unit trust or ETFs, right? Explains. Suggesting Satrix, Signia, 10x, right? It's not saying Stanlip. It's not saying the things that.
But I mean, the fact that it goes out and looks at the market, right? It pulls industry information, and as you say, whether right or wrong, it's clients are going to go and do this. Investors are doing this. Yeah.
Is your plan for education and other long-term goals, annual review checklist? You know, so what to check, what do you need to do? There's an example summary plan with all of the things. And then it says, I'm going to create a simple spreadsheet model for you that calculates your targets and shows how your savings. Okay, so I'm gonna say yes, but you and I can continue our conversation. We can come back.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is what clients are going to come to you with, armed with.
Yeah.
Like, this is what this thing says. What do you say? That kind of thing, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't come to you. Like, so how we position ourselves And I don't think relationship alone is enough, because
Mm.
it is a very important foundation, a very important part of that, Michael. But the problem with that is that there's friction,
Yeah.
and friction is good. But sometimes go like, I don't have an hour or 2 hours to go and speak to my advisor. I just want to do this and get this done. Or I want to
Yeah.
do this tonight at whatever time. And I think that's where we need to really educate people on the way, to make sure that they understand what is it that we really do for them. Yes, the numbers and the products and all that
Yes.
stuff, but we will use AI to do that as well in the future once we can trust it.
Yes.
Like, we'll do that because it takes 5 minutes instead of 5 days. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. But everything that happens around that, that's where our value sits. And that's the thing that
Yes.
AI can mimic and might replace some.
Yeah.
But in most cases, if we are very clear around that, and we show up for our clients and we don't sit and do admin, then that's not going to be a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's when you come back to a human discussion, I mean, in the last webinar I spoke about, like, people are very afraid sometimes to talk about their financial situations, and I think it's about making sure that it's a safe and safe space for them to go engage. I don't think I would put any of my sort of credit records or anything into a chat GPT personally. I mean, I'd be hesitant to do that, because the first thing that springs to mind is it'll probably find my email and I'll be spammed with a whole lot of other things. But like, clients won't necessarily, investors won't necessarily know that. They might gladly feel safer. Oh yeah, let me put this into ChatGPT. But you could ask the question and say, like, well, okay, and I mean, just as a random scenario, like, what's your medical record like? You've got diabetes. Have you considered these things? You haven't put that into it, but I know you. I know you've got that. You've told me this before, and you bring all that human elements into it, and you make it more wholesome. So again, the stats and numbers and the type of plans you get it. It's like an end result of the actual conversation that'll happen.
Can I challenge you a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure, go
So
for it.
not about the part of us knowing not to put that kind of information into ChatGPT. I
Mm,
think one thing that I've seen clients, what they do is they value time over privacy, and they will just do whatever is the easiest for them. But the thing I want to challenge you on is that I'm not only having financial planning conversations with ChatGPT. If you go through my ChatGPT, you see I've been asking a lot about my knee. I've been asking a lot
okay.
about some other things, like how can I fix this? What do I
Okay.
need to look at?
Yes.
And now with memory in these things, it knows, because I've been having
Yeah.
chats about my health. I've been having chats about like any other
Yes.
kinds of things. In a
Yes.
session I was the other day, somebody said that, it was sort of, he said it was quite weird, but he was sort of practicing to Spanish. He's going off to a trip, and he wanted to sort of practice Spanish again. And then ChatGPT gave him a phrase specifically that is around that is gluten intolerant. Like, he doesn't know
Okay.
whether that's cool or freaky. And he forgot that. He says, but how do you know that? And he says, no, in one of our chats back about this thing, you mentioned this, and I thought this
Yes.
would be useful for you. So
Yeah.
the more people use their AI model
Yeah.
of choice, the more
Yeah.
context there's going to be, and the stronger that memory becomes, the more it will know. So I
Yeah.
do want to challenge you a little bit.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. And you're right. And I think and it's no different to going to a YouTube and searching for someone to tell you about knee. I mean, you can scroll through Instagram, and maybe one day you clicked on something where someone said, "Oh, do this for your knees," and the next thing you have multiple feeds, and you have do this exercise, do that sort of thing. So, and that's related to my account, right? I might not have searched needs, but now I've taken that contact and I've put it into AI. So I'm now getting a bit more of a structured view. I can declare my weight, my level of activity, my fitness. And I mean, if you think about it, obviously in South Africa, one of the biggest houses that have been collecting this type of data for years is Discovery through the Vitality plans. They sort of built that and use that data to sort of like structure some of the other offerings and so forth. And I think that also comes back to one of the other things I wanted to mention earlier when you were showing your recording is the value of data and getting that right. So your data, as much as information that's been recorded in your chats and your history around your chats, it's building up a profile of you. Like mine might be skewed a bit because I asked about grade 6 type exam test questions and, all things like that. So it might think like, okay, so you probably have a son that's in grade 6, or you have a child that's in grade 6. And it starts to shape who Michael is in this digital world that the AI has a relationship with. So yeah, I mean, I definitely no argument there. I think it's you're right. Someone's going to come and in your chat, as much as it didn't come up with from your prompt to someone else, it might have gone and searched out and say, well, you're going to need medical aid after 65, and this is the projected costs of that. So as much as your savings or your income that you need is, I think it was about 250K a month, 50K is going to go to your medical aid contribution. So you need to consider that. Will you still have a bond or not? Will your house be bonded up or things like that? And you're right. Investors are going to come with this.
Yeah. There's lots that it can do at the moment that's very low level and that it gets right. And there's a lot of the nuances and things it's not getting right yet, right?
Yeah.
But we're not at that level yet. But if it can do this stuff, I mean, then it will be able. If there's anything that there's a process that we go through, at some point it will be able to do that. So I'm seeing a world, and this is like, I'm not saying like we're doomed. We're definitely. What I am trying to say is that you can't ignore this. Like, this is not going away. Number one, this is bigger than the internet, bigger than cell phones and things like that. So it's not going away. And we can decide to put our heads in the sand and say, well, let's just see how long this lasts. And I don't say jump and just go do things, because that's also not the right approach. But you can't do nothing. You've got to stay on top of it, learn about it, see what's happening, what people are doing. Go try it yourself to see how it works and what it does and what it tells you, so that you are prepared when you have these conversations. But it is about the fact that I think like anything that you can do and that you have been doing on a computer up until now can be done by AI at some point, or will be done by AI at some point. So think about the things where you don't use a computer. Like, those are the things that you really want to probably think a lot more about and say, well, what is my value in that space? Because that's the stuff that people still want. I still believe that people will do this. This is more a case of them showing up more prepared. It's great for engagement and great for, because now you can ask them. They've actually now got something to come and talk to you about, instead of just saying, what should I do with my RA? Like, this is going to really enhance that conversation. But it also means like we got to stay a step ahead and understand what is going to show up at our door. So this is more what this is about for me. It's definitely not that you will. For those of you who hate doing financial needs analysis and those kinds of things, happy days. Okay, for those of you who love it, I don't know, like, because we all do it because we have to, and it is a real big value add. But we really enjoy time with clients. Like, that's where we really get most of our, and most of us get our energy from speaking to clients and spending time with them. We're going to be able to do more of that. So, and have an informed conversation. I think those are the good things that I'm seeing that's coming from.
Yeah. One of the speaking of grade 6, one of the things that I also find useful for me is I'm not an accountant by nature, so I don't have like I'll get through, but I can easily go and say, explain EBITDA to me like I am a 12-year-old, and it'll break it down and it'll give me that. So it's also that learning that's now going to be where someone might feel, oh, I'm going to meet my advisor, he's going to throw RA, he's going to throw tax-free saver. I could know, like, just clients are going to go in and they're going to say, okay, explain this to me in simple terms, just so that I can make the engagement better and not feel bewildered when I walk away, that they've thrown things. And again, that's another trust form, right? You'd also appreciate your client coming to you a little bit more informed, and it makes the whole process a bit more seamless.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to quickly swap over before we just touch on some of the regs ones. So I just want to sort of like just touch on and give the audience just a little bit of sorry, I know I'm going back to PowerPoint, but I'll show something else in a little while. So in our world, for INN8, our approach was digital first, and that was a massive journey. And I think AI aside, it really is a world where we thought about like, okay, look, paper-based forms, all of those things. And I think everyone in the industry is sort of moving that way. I think you spoke earlier about the record of advice and keeping that, and we've strongly considered those mechanisms and how we can enable that. I mean, we had to engage with the regulators in terms of what was permissible in terms of our Cat 3 licensing, how we would go in and constructively challenge the Cat 1 and Cat 2 in terms of that record advice. And I think that's with being advisor inspired, getting advisors in and getting them in. And I think earlier on you also touched on around everyone has a different, or more or less, actually no, everyone has a different admin and operational process. And as much as we've gone and we've built this, some of our challenges have come back to how everyone operates in some way or other. And I think what's been really nice is that we've received a lot of constructive criticism, and that's fair. We've taken that on, and what it allows us to do. Some people might think of like, it's just another. It's more like we don't like, and I like to take it as like, okay, how do we enhance? How do we enable? How do we visit this problem that we can solve, and we can collaborate with our different networks and sort of see how we can expand and sort of play out that field. But I think the thing for us is that we could have also chosen to stay stagnant in a form-based world, whether it just be an online form. And sort of where I sort of go with this is, again, is sort of like AI is going to enhance somebody to build their own FNA tool or their own personalized CRM tool. And with us being in a digital world, we sort of start to get to that integration points and that collaboration points. So yes, we're building digital, but it also now allows us to do a lot more. And I think that was the thing that as rough as this journey was, it was also exciting to now be open to new opportunities or new challenges, just from our journey in that space. This will be sort of shared in the slide. The one thing I wanted to talk about, and I think this is so key for anyone to remember, and you can bring it back to, not only us when we went out and looked at a platform, but also in terms of any technology that you use. Like what you find is that a lot of global players, not everyone is fit for SA Reg off the top of it. A lot of companies will talk about being ready for it, but it's hard. We say we're the same maybe in some instances, but when you start to dig into it and you start to find certain things, you start to really unpack and see, CGT in South Africa is managed in a very different way. It's very specific in this way and that. How POPI is managed, how FEEC is managed. But all of this is also, it's regulatory information, it's technology information. And, that's how we sort of like also approach this in terms of like, well, we know you had to fill out a whole form, and how do we get that into our digital layers, and how do we get that data in? One of the, just to sort of show a behind the scenes view, and I'll also show a little bit of ChatGPT. So for anyone who's sort of, sorry, this is Copilot, so it's not the OpenAI one. I've taken for those who are familiar, SARS have their business requirement specification in terms of their IRP5 reports. So they do the same for IT3s, etc. So you can go get there, and you need this as a service provider. We provide that reporting, and as you can imagine, today you have employers that do it monthly. Us as a list, we submit biannually, but there is a future trend to submit this manually. But I just wanted to give everyone a sense of like the importance of data and data completeness. This is a list of fields that sits in this report, and before someone would sort of bring in it with that AI spin, before someone would sit there and they would go through this, they'd copy paste it into Excel and they'd put it out and then they'd figure out. And I mean, this is simply just the list of fields. So you can see like, like as a service provider, when we come to the completion of forms and information, there's fields we can derive from based on certain things. There's fields that we have to do as part of KYC, but there's also fields when it comes to tax reporting that we sort of put out there. And I know I'm digging under the hood for everyone, but just to give you a sense of like, sometimes you might see a field and you might think, so I really have to complete that in. And in some instances, we've had to drive that in mandatory. But it's because of like, that comfort that that we're handling tax reporting correctly. And that when your client receives that IRP5 statement or certificate, that information is complete and is best served. The one thing I can tell you that in this BRS, there's a whole lot of logic that sits on these fields. And I think where AI is going to sort of help, and and I imagine the regulator is going to sort of dive into this, is that they've also got to look at ways in terms of how AI is going to support them and what they're going to be doing. So it might not necessarily be in terms of changing and losing all these fields, but how do they ensure that regulations manage what everyone else is doing out there, especially more so now with AI? I mean, I know we touched on Kofi a bit, and I think, Ronso, that sort of caveats just into our next sort of topic where I know it might be the really boring one, but it's just in terms of regulations, in terms of what you've seen. I mean, I think, Poppy, off the top of my head, I think in July there was a piece or a directive issued around AI, but I don't think it's formalized. I think it was more a more sort of governance or sort of like guidance, sorry, not governance. But I think we're gonna see more and more of this come out. But and I know you mentioned when someone says AI block it, I think you got to have it. Like, we off the top as the group said to have a framework in place, practice safe over AI, and we've had forums where people have showcased what they can do. But we obviously need to formalize that. You need compliance sign off. You need risk to sign those things off. And I think it's almost like we're more and more conscious of this now than before in terms of regulations and the AI world.
So there's a couple of there's a couple of these kind of regulations, call them, that has come out. I think the first time I really thought about Poppy in all of this, I still call it Poppy. Back in my day, it was Poppy. I don't know what the acronym, how you pronounce it correctly, but anyway, hopefully everybody understands what I'm talking about.
It works.
It works. So I sort of did this talk at one of the FPI events about ethics and AI, and this is the first time I really got to delve deep into this whole world around what are we putting into, what happens to it, like what is, because we were supposed to do this like a long time ago. It's got nothing to do with AI, actually. We always had this thing with Poppy where we had to make sure what happens to the data, where is the data stored, where is it processed, what data is it, etc., etc. So there's all those regulations, and we know that finally came into law in 2021. So that's the big part about it. But then in 2024, there was a joint communication that came out by the FSCA and the Prudential Authority around cybersecurity. And then this year, there was another joint communication between them, with them, that was talking about cloud computing and data offshoring. So now there's suddenly very specific focus around this. And now suddenly there's a lot more requirements around this stuff, right? So for a business like INN8 and Stanlip and the Liberties of the World, etc., that's part of how they operate, right? If I listen to all the words you use, like, this is typically how a big business would go about getting these things in place, getting it signed off, getting like all that stuff. Yeah. But then you've got me here, like in Somerset West, sitting here in my studio, and I've got a business with 4 people, and we sit with similar issues, right? But we're not nearly at your level, and also we don't run the risk that you run. And second and thirdly, probably we don't have the in inverted commas the time, right? So that's the challenge. And most of these new regulations that has come about is saying, literally, like Kofi, all these joint communications are saying, like, Mr. and Mrs. Business, you have to go and assess your risk and decide how you are going to mitigate this and what your policies are going to be. They give you absolutely no guidance. They just say what they want. So, like, for example, the board must sign it off and blah, 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 blah. But that's what they want. And then they come and audit you, and then they don't like what you've done. Like, okay, so you can't win. Like, that's sort of how we feel about it. But there's some good guidance in there, and to say which of these things are really applicable in my world. I don't think turning a blind or just saying, like, I know my clients and they are all above board and they are all fantastic people. We will bribe with them. That stuff is not going to hold water, right? You've got to have a clear framework and a process to say, how do we do this? Anyway, so the best thing that you could do, before I talk about the Poppy stuff, because there's something that people don't get about it. But what is important, I know I lost my train of thought. Let me talk about Poppy. That'll come back to me. Sorry, Michael.
Okay, no worries.
So with the privacy stuff, right? So there's always this thing around, but I switched off. I've got a paid for ChatGPT account, or a paid for Copilot account, or a paid for Claude account, or whatever it is the tool you're using. And that does help, but that's from a training point of view, because now some of them will opt you out. Like my business account, for example, by default doesn't train. If you have a ChatGPT Plus account, which is the first paid for account for, it's more for individuals, they still train the models. You've got to go opt out. So you've got to switch it off. Okay, so that's the big difference. But that's only half the story, because that training is now more to do with my IP and my copyright, not so much that I'm putting my client's information in there. It's that I'm putting my secret 11 herbs and spices in there. That's the problem when they train the models, right? The privacy side of it is a completely unrelated to whether you have a paid for account or not. Like, it's got nothing to do with that, because Poppy has got very specific rules around when data is being sent outside of South Africa. It either got to be to a jurisdiction which it's got adequate protection. In other words, my language, same as Poppy or better. So the only place I know about is GDPR. So usually the European Union, that will be fine. If not, it's still fine, but then you need informed client consent. And that is a massive problem, because that means this is something that we were supposed to do anyway with all of the tools we've been using, because we all use something like Notion, or sometimes some like Wealthbox, people who use that CRM, and we use tools from overseas, right? It's not only South African stuff. But we never took the time to look at their privacy statements and where are the servers and what happens to the processing, how long do they store the data, or any of that stuff. And all of that has got to do with privacy. So when you do informed client consent, Michael, I tell you exactly where the data is going, what the tool does, like basically the privacy terms of that tool. And then you've got to explicitly say yes. You can't just say, if you don't say anything, then I assume you're fine. You've got to say, yes, I'm fine with that. And that's the part I think that's missing from any businesses, most businesses in South Africa. It's probably the corporates might get that right, but for all the other businesses, doesn't matter which sector or industry you're in, I think that's a big problem for all of us. Because how do I do business? Like, here's these amazing tools, but now you make it so difficult for me. And I think that's the back and forth we're having at the moment about understanding the risks, and am I willing to take on that risk? Because all of these tools have got fantastic security. So from that cybersecurity point of view, it's great, right? But it's the data processing side that's a bit of a challenge at the moment. And you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? So I don't know. Like, but
well, I mean, Frans, I was gonna ask, like, I'm not sure what mobile device you have, but I mean, when you've upgraded the operating system the last time, did you just simply tick agree and consent? Because it's massive. There's an image that shows X, Instagram, Facebook, Apple. I think there's something with Android and Google's parent company. I mean, it's streams and streams of paper long that this thing looks, and most of us just like and then hit agree. So I think that's like also key. And maybe a nice thing there is to copy paste it, put it into AI, and say, what do I need to look out for here? But that comes back to the whole thing where I'm lazy to read. I'm going to let AI make a decision for me. I'll hand it over that little bit of power that I should be more.
And as I said earlier, you know, like, we're so worried about what we are doing because we are the ones that need to comply with all these regulations. But Michael, you in your personal capacity can do whatever you want. It's your data. You don't need like a signed permission slip from yourself. So as much as we do the right thing, clients do whatever they want. And that's sort of the thing that I understand, like, battle to understand really, because there's no balance in terms of that. I guess we always have the power about what do I do with my own stuff that I own. But it is quite an interesting dynamic, because it costs us a lot of money to comply. It costs a lot of time to comply. We run a lot of risks. We can have penalties imposed on us, all of that. Yet the client can do whatever they want. So yes, we will have to have these kinds of I agree, like click the button that I agree. It's not, it is important. We can't ignore that part, unfortunately. But
Thanks, Francois. I know we've hit the hour mark, and I think, Francois, let's just spend a couple of minutes on a little bit of the future outlook between ourselves, and then I'll hop over to a bit of the Q&A. I see this I think it's about 16 questions, and we can just go through that. So maybe if I let you go first, just in terms of your future outlook, in terms of I think we've talked a lot about AI, but I think maybe sort of like that spin in terms of with your engagements with different advice firms and some of these conferences that you've been through and what you've seen out there, what's your sentiment across the next 3 to 5 years? Let's call it. I know 12 months, a lot can happen in 12 months. But let's take a little bit of a longer stab at it.
I mean, this is, when cell phones came about, I didn't think about like it's going to become so big and it's going to be in every part of our world. And even the internet, for me, the internet was just very cool. I have the screaming box and it was very fascinating to me, and that was it.
Yes.
But now when AI came around, that very first day I saw that I could sort of weirdly see where things are going. And for me, AI, not necessarily in its current form, but definitely where we're going to. If we look, there's a lot of ifs and things that needs to fall in place. So let me just say this. So this would be, if we do it right, this is what I see for the future, is that we're going to have a lot of time back. That's the main thing that AI does. There's also a negative side to it, which I'm really concerned about, is that, and there's sometimes in the meetings, I would tell my team, just like, you're not allowed to use AI. Just think for yourself. Let's first do that, and then rather use AI to check and peek and do things like that. When we outsource it too much, so I'm worried about a few things. So the outlook looks great, and I think we're going to get a lot of time back. It's almost going to be like Ben 10 with a machine, and you can just do very cool stuff, right? And get into whatever mode you need to get into and spend your time with clients and really bring the fun back. I think that's really, and that goes for your admin team and for everything around that. There's so many things that we don't want to do that the machine can just do, and we can really just focus in. And I think there's lots of things that we don't even think about doing at the moment that we're going, oh, now we can do this and we can do that. So that's why I see this going. But the part that I'm really concerned about is the fact that if you don't, and Errol Meyer puts this quite well as well, like our critical thinking. That's the big part. And if people are using, because one of the biggest use cases currently, it's shifted from, I can't remember what, but now the main use case of ChatGPT and the likes is education, is learning. I'm not saying like formal education. I'm saying like, I want to know, how does this work? Tell me how this works. Boom. It tells you. Oh, give me an example. Boom. Can you build this for me? Boom. That's what's happening. So nobody's spending time anymore in Excel, right? So you just get AI to build you the Excel thing. And that for me is the worry part of it, because for a few reasons. So the one is that the data is biased. So it might just teach one kind of thing. If you don't prompt it correctly, and it mixes things up, and you don't have the knowledge to see, no, but that's not South African, this is US-based country. If you don't have that domain knowledge, you're screwed. So we're gonna that manipulation and things that can basically happen off the back of that, whether intended or unintended. But those are the things I've been thinking about a lot, Michael. Yes, like ever since that FBI thing, I've been like, okay, so what is the dark side of AI? What does that look like? Because you've always got to consider both sides of it. The dark side isn't something that keeps us from using it, but it is the thing that keeps us to say, how do we use it well? What does it look like when we use it well? And unfortunately, there will be other people that do things that we should. It's always amazing how people sometimes default to what? How can I steal more? And how can I? My brain luckily doesn't work that way. But so I see this world, to summarize this, Michael. So I see this world where we have a lot more freedom because we have a lot more time, and we can spend time on the things that really makes us happy and gives us energy and those kinds of things. But also we've got to be very wary around how we train ourselves, and that we keep thinking for ourselves and challenging the things that I might be saying. So for me, it's a nice wingman, but that's what it should be. It should not be the pilot. And I know co-pilot, pilot, but I would say it should be a wingman and not the leader. You should be wielding it and not it.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, I think, Francois, you hit the nail on the head. It's this type of assistant that fills in a few of the gaps. Like if you prepare for something, as you say, and you've created your own content about it, it's great to actually just dump it in there. And then if it has a reference framework, it asks you questions. It says, oh, why didn't you put this in there? Why did you not? Oh, yeah, I should have done that. I should put that in there. So it's almost like this little extra reminder of certain things, that becomes useful. And the way I like to look at it, the pro. Like some of our teams have said, like, oh, we've shown them like, oh, I can put together a product requirement document. Like you can feel the tension in the room. We're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to be drafting that anymore. I'm not going to be doing that. But it comes back to a massive point that you just raised now. It's that domain knowledge. If you know that, all you're doing is you're getting that starting point. You're having something drafted for you, and now you can go in and make it more complete. It becomes more of a comprehensive artifact than something that was forgotten, or a piece of technology was not included in a change or in an enhancement, normally in our world. And I think that's the way we sort of need to look at it. I think what people might push, the one thing that scares me, and maybe it's because I played around with it, but not so much, is the vibe coding thing. I worry that some people are going to lose money in those spaces where someone's going to bring apps and they're going to use it and they're going to just plug things in, and there's no sort of compliance or risk around that. So I think I'd be very cautious and for me, I'd read an agreement to see if someone's used vibe coding to build their app. But I don't think it's going to stop. It's definitely going to get better. And again, there it becomes a collaborator with the developer who starts to use it in that space. I think the other beauty side, which you also alluded to, is educating, using it as an educational tool. I mean, we all sometimes probably jump on and say, oh, kids are using AI, university students are using AI, but they were using Google before, right? Don't forget that. Institutions had to come up and say Wikipedia is not a credible source because like people are editing it. But for years, everyone was writing papers or using Wikipedia as a reference, using Google search. And if you didn't take the time to go and validate that reference, you were still producing information, and you may have gotten away with it, you may not have. So institutions also have to start getting smarter in terms of how they protect that, how they ensure that the content being generated is human generated and not completely AI generated. I think you're not going to stop someone using it to generate a complete document, but you got to make sure that there's some sort of original pieces within there. So I think for me it's very interesting. Will it accelerate a lot of like things in sort of like the technology space? I definitely think so, but I'd be cautious to see what is really adds value versus something that's just there, that's bright and shiny for me.
It's oh man, you made me think of something now. Now I forgot again. No, it left my mind now. There was something I wanted to add to one of the things you were saying. But anyway, let's continue. Sorry, there was one. I'll think about it now. I'll come back to it.
No worries, no worries. I'm just going to go through some of the Q&A. There's a few questions, so let's see how many we can tackle in the last sort of 20 minutes that we have for those on the line. So we got a question from Tulani here. The same way we do a financial needs analysis to determine the client's needs, what process do you suggest we follow to determine when we need to use an AI tool? Francois, I think you kind of alluded to this a little earlier in terms of like someone's just going in to use ChatGPT, but in the advisor space, what did you think they would use, or is it more just a case of testing what you have against ChatGPT as an example, or AI as an example?
I think you need to start with your client journey, right? What does that client journey look like from long before they become a client to the day that they leave the practice for whatever reason? What does that look like? What are the processes that are at play? And if you've got that complete picture, then you can start saying, well, okay, where there's also this thing, where can we use AI and where can we use technology? And it'll be everywhere. The bigger question is, should I use AI and technology in that particular step or that particular part of the process? Because there are certain places where even if you could use AI, you do not want to use AI. So for example, if a client first inquires about your service, do you really want an AI to respond to that? Or is this an opportunity to create a first impression that you want to make sure that this is personal? That's your thing, that this is very personal, it's relationships, then maybe you don't want to. Maybe you do, because maybe you've positioned your business as a digital first business and a digital only business. So it depends very much on your value proposition. But you've got to then go through all of that and then say, well, here I want to. Yeah. And usually the way that I think about it is when there's emotion or tension, then maybe don't use That's the part where you can add the most value. If it's just run of the mill, nobody wants to do it. Let's AI and take the hell out of it. But if it's not, if there's like sort of emotions that are building or tension that's building, then rather not.
Francois, I'm assuming you know Wayne Johnson because he says AI can't make
Apparently,
bribe
yes.
rookies like
I do.
Francois K.
I do know Wayne, yes. Now the whole world knows.
So everyone's coming to Somerset West for some bribe rookies. Cool. So we got a question from Grant here. Great information regarding general AI tools. Personally, I prefer Teams for meeting notes here. However, which AI tool is specifically designed for our industry around FNAs, etc.? I've used Copilot, Summarize, etc., which really works well. But are there advice specific tools, perhaps integrated into INN8, etc.? So from our side, I don't know personally if there's anything that's off the top integrated to FNA tools. I think Francois mentioned it earlier in the call. What we are seeing is that service providers or tool providers are starting to embed AI within their tools. And I think, there it's about investigating a little bit and starting to see if the tool that you have has any AI element to it and what is it doing. And then I think bringing it back to where's that information going? Is it a locally stored server or is it going offshore? That's, I think, are the key things that you want to look at. Where we as INN8 in terms of integration, I mentioned in some of the one of the previous sessions that we've started to look at integrating into a tool like Salesforce, but as you can imagine, that's an enterprise size tool. However, we do want to sort of start looking at, because we know that hyper personalization is going to be a real thing, is how can we start to formulate and look at integrating with smaller tools and businesses to get that. And our digital arm gives us that flexibility and capability. So, Grant, I hope that answers the question. Franz, I don't know if you have anything you want to touch on that one.
Yeah, also, it's interesting. I think we would typically default to thinking about in our own role, but I think those are the more, because we are more client facing, and those are the things where I'm not yet convinced that we should be. We could be, and we will be in the future using AI in that space. But I think it's more the back office things where we should focus first, because it's safe. It's much safer. It also has a lot of gains. If you've got 3-4 people working for you and they're all doing things, it adds up a lot quicker than what you're doing. So I would typically not focus on the financial planning side at this point. But there are so all of the AI that's been built into the CRMs as well, they are on the CRM side. They're not on the planning side. So it will do the meeting notes and those kinds of things. But and help you create tasks and sort of prep for meetings, because you have the context about everything that's in the CRM, etc. So that's where at the moment there's a lot of value, but there's no AI powered tool as.
Yeah. The next one is from Anonymous. Is AI not robbing us from thinking power, brain usage? I think, Francois, both you and I touched a little bit on this. Like, I wouldn't want anyone to lose their creative, spirit in some form or other. I think you've got to, as much as AI can teach a whole lot of things, remember it's only going to go with what it knows. Everything before 2022 was information on the internet. Everything post that, which was probably generated by systems and people, or people using systems. Whereas now we've got like AI generating information and content out there. So, the value add in your domain knowledge for anyone out there is always going to be key. And it's always worth, as much as it would take you the 5 hours to maybe prepare a document, certainly use AI to help you prepare it, but then if that takes an hour, use one of the other 5 hours to review it and help you prepare better. So you get 3 hours back, just in that hypothetical scenario, but now you have more opportunity to explore something further or learn something more.
And also, let me add, because this is what I wanted to say earlier when I forgot what I wanted to say. The more you can restrict it from going outside and finding information or making information up, because that's one of the big things that it hallucinates about in 25%, some say up to 50% of the time. So that means that it comes up with things that seems very believable and very true, but it's not. It's all fake, or some lawyers. And if you give it very specific, here's the document. So it's all about your structured thing. And this is the big thing about these Claude skills that has now come out, right? So you can now build skills for Claude. And all that is it's a structured document. I'm not going to get technical, but it's a structured document that has everything to do with that one particular thing. And every time that Claude needs to do that thing, it will pull that. So Claude is the same as ChatGPT, and but it's by another company. So it will then use that skill in order to do that thing. Okay. And that's sort of a way to get around these hallucinations, because that's basically programming the AI chatbot in plain language without having to know any programming language. So you could just you would explain to me step by step, that's what you do, and it will then do that. So that's where we're headed. And also I've found that the more information I give it and the more I direct it, like I did with those 2 transcripts. So when we have other things that we build in ChatGPT and in Claude, we've got projects and things, and then in there's instructions, and we give it knowledge. And then we tell it to use that knowledge. And only when I wanted to go outside to the internet, I would ask it to go search the internet. Or we will go and do our research before the time, take that into a document, put it in as knowledge for the AI custom or whatever to work with that, because then we know that information is correct. And we also explicitly tell it not to make up anything and to only stick to the facts. So there are ways. It's not foolproof, but it does make it a lot more reliable than it was without that. So that's also important.
We've got a good interesting question here from Martin. I can see the younger generations who are comfortable with computers using this tool as a guideline, but they might feel happier checking it with an advisor. How do you feel about that? Let's see if I can throw that one at you.
So I had a conversation earlier in the year at the airport. I met up with somebody that actually from the same group as where you are, and we were just having a conversation. He was telling me about his daughter, who's 24. Don't eat the wet fish, but I think it's 24, and she just started working, and she just went to see an advisor for the first time. And he asked her about it afterwards, and she said, she felt so stupid. She didn't know what to ask. She felt so out of her depth. So that was the experience. Okay, so I think assuming that, and I do know Martin very well, that we should no longer be assuming that the relationship is number one. I always challenge people as well, and I'll come back to what he's saying, but that just because you've had a client for 30 years doesn't mean you've got a great relationship. They just haven't moved away from you, right? Because you see them once a year. I'm not talking about the guys you play golf with and braai with, and there's always that small group of clients. But for the bulk of them, in 30 years, we maybe spend 30 hours with it, which is, if you look at it on a scale, that's nothing, right? And have you really spent time with them? We've been doing all the talking. So I sometimes challenge that. But also we can't default to, but they always want to check. I agree. Like in most cases, I would just want to is this correct? Is this there? But now if in our engagements with them, we don't make them feel like, you are hurt, it's fine, you're not being judged, because we don't have the intention to do that, but that's sometimes how it comes across. And then I think they will veer more towards the side of, let me rather use something that's always kind, that's always patient, that's always very specific, and that will say sorry and would work, all that kind of stuff. So we might even be driving them towards that. But the notion of somebody wanting a human to chop it, and also I think the more money is at stake, the more that answer will be yes. For getting started, and the smaller it is, I don't know, not necessary.
Sounds a lot of questions.
I do sound like a doomsday prophet at the moment, but that's I'm just being realistic. I'm just saying this is what's happening. So
I think, Francois, it's kind of hard not to, right? We always try to look at the positives, but there is a fear. I think a lot of generations. I was saying to someone the other day, I grew up and Terminator was a horror movie back in the 80s, right? Kids today don't know about Terminator, so they building robots that can think for themselves, because for them that's that's what's going to help me. I'm going to need that. Whereas I'm like, you guys haven't seen this thing run through a wall with a red eye. So, and that's just, we almost have to be more aware of it and see it. Maybe we need to re-release Terminator in the cinemas. I'm all for that. All right. There's a question here. It's around AI quantum computing entering the space. Given how quickly these technologies are emerging, how do businesses realistically keep up with the pace of change? I think here we kind of look into, for us specifically, like, yeah, we absolutely want to explore all this, but I think there's the unknown cost factor. I mean, I know they recently released a GPU of about $3,000, so you could put it in and you could build your own sort of LLM within there, and again run a massive business just on that single computer. So I think these advances in technology are not going to stop. I think what we want to do is we want to be, for us as a corporate, we want to be compliant. We want to stay in touch with regulations. And I think also it comes back to data, right? It's the information that we put in there, making sure that we're not just sending information anywhere. As much as there's all this quantum computing power, I think it's really just, how do you use it? Do you need to, for us, do we need to upgrade everything to a cloud service because it all sits on quantum computers, or do we need to keep it localized because that's serving our need right now? And do we have a different problem that we need to get to and solve? I think we'd be naive to ignore it and not stay abreast of it. So yeah, so I think it's almost that question where you're in the fork of the road, but you're probably going to come back to the point of you should either use it in some way or other. But sometimes it's also nice to wait and see for certain things.
And I want to add just quickly. So last week at the Money Maestros event, Rob McDonald, most people know who Rob is, but Rob McDonald was speaking about how do you redesign your business around this whole concept of financial well-being. But there were some really interesting things. So he's a phenomenal storyteller, and he used the Springboks because he loves sport as well. And he was talking about Rassie and what Rassie was doing. But if you think what Rassie has done, like, in the beginning, everybody was laughing at him with his lights up at the Bloemfontein Stadium and all of that, right? But he was testing and trying and experimenting.
Yeah.
And I mean, what he's become today is the savior of so many things because he's a strategist. So he thinks about things strategically, and he's pushing the boundaries, and he's trying. He didn't just say, this is the game of rugby and this is how rugby is played, so we must just stick to it, right? But there's one crucial thing that he said, and this was what, with all of the things that he had to deliver as the head coach of the Springboks, is let the main thing be the main thing. And what he was saying with that is that we've got to win. Doesn't matter. We can transform. We can play like whatever. Like, we can do all of the things that you want. But if we're not winning, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So let the main thing be the main thing. And I think that's the same message that Rob was trying to give to the audience at that event, is to say, you've got to focus on being a financial planner and a financial advisor and look after your client. That is the main thing. The main thing is to help them achieve the outcomes that they are setting out to achieve. That is the main thing. How we do it, the strategies we employ, how we change the business, etc., that is secondary to that, because you need that in order to be able to keep delivering that. Because the reality is that if you don't, somebody else will. So this technology is one of with or without you. With or without you, this is happening. Like, there is no way. So we can't hang on to say, here's the thing. It's just, so how can we be more strategic like Rassie and be 4 times world champions now? I think we are the country that's won it the most. Everybody else that's so big in the world has only won it once, maybe twice. So yeah, it's important. I think,
and I think you hit a nice word. You hit a nice word there, Francois. It was experimenting, right? And I think for anyone that sort of like follows any of these AI, they've all popped up as experts, but there are some really good ones that have been on the other side of pure developers and coders, and they've been in the industry and talking not only about AI but technology for 10 years plus. So I normally look to them, and a lot of them talk about, like, just go and experiment with it. Try and experiment. Obviously, taking the risk approach, don't throw your client data in there. I see we had a question also, like, with regard to client information. To tread the waters more carefully, though, it takes a bit more work. One could filter client data to remove the sensitive info and then process less sensitive info to manage information risk, your thoughts. So, I mean, for me, I think in the last webinar, I did a case where I actually scrambled any client information names, surnames, ID numbers. And I took that because I wanted to get some sort of financial data out of it and look across unit trust funds with holdings and trends. And I think that's okay, because you're not uploading that sensitive information. The machine's not going to learn it or go and figure out who this is or what this is. But I think you've got to be conscious that you're doing that. Or I mean, I scramble that information in that session. You can probably delete it. It all depends on what you want to show. But don't take Michael Mulder with a retirement annuity, current portfolio value, recurring contribution, and then upload that, because by some chance or other, someone's going to find it. I mean, we didn't even touch on the Deloitte issue, that happened I think it was in Australia. So these issues are going to surface, but what we've seen with any of these things, cybersecurity, all of those things are going to get stronger and stronger. I think the cybersecurity space definitely, I mean, there's going to be a lot of headaches for people, because it's going to be AI is battling them, and then what do they fight back with? Do they fight back with AI? Do they fight back with human? They're going to have to find ways to sort of balance that as well.
Yeah.
Cool. We got 5 minutes left. I'm just going to see if there are a few more questions. I might need to take these offline, and then let's just respond to these. But I think, Francois, maybe just in closing, your final words for the audience.
Oh, this is an interesting time that we are living in, and this is one of the biggest opportunities I think that has come around. I think there's a lot of, I think I absolutely know, because I wonder about these things and reflect on these things quite a bit, is that we don't know what the future is going to look like. We have no clue, because the only thing we know is what we know now and what we've been doing. So go back to many years ago, like everybody worked on farms. Okay, and they couldn't see any other life than that as being working on a farm. Like, I mean, initially also, you just looked after your own family. Like, you had your own little garden and your own little, like, livestock and all of that, and that was life. And people were murdering each other left, right, and center, and there were wars all like permanently, and that's what life was about. Move forward, when the industrial revolution came and everybody started then moving from the farms into factories and things, not maybe ideal, that's not what we want to do, but from there we also now went into where we are now with the information age and technology, etc. Suddenly white collar work became a thing, and now with AI, that is under threat. It's a fact. Like, anything that we can, but that's knowledge base. So I don't know yet what that's going to look like and how I will redefine myself and what we will do, etc., etc. But do I need to be afraid of that? I guess that answer for me is no, but the answer for many people will be, yep, Francois, I'm 75, I'm 85. Like the other day, there was somebody in a session that was 85. So it's a very different conversation for that person or somebody who is at that point. For me, that's 50, and very different for somebody who's 25 today. So there is no right answer. But I think just saying no, unless you know exactly why you're saying no, and it's not because you're afraid or not because you don't have answers, then that's a good answer. But if there are underlying things there, you need to figure out, like, why is this such a big thing for me? How can I think about this differently? And just take it one step at a time. Like, I always believe, like, this step leads to the next step, leads to the next step. And then, my word, I never saw this coming. I never saw this. I never even thought of this as a thing for me. And I think that's what will happen. And things are moving quickly, but they're not moving that quickly. I don't think it's like blistering speed. It is definitely moving. But it's amazing. I mean, you will be able, Michael, in closing, in your business, already in my business, I'm building my own little apps that we can use for my business. That's what corporates do. Corporates have always been designing their own system, configuring their own systems. Anybody can do that now.
Agreed.
So you don't have to go find the perfect system. But the problem is, you build it, you've got to maintain it. So that becomes a bit of a pain. So there are pros and cons to everything. So take your time to learn this, play with it, experience it, and form your... Don't listen to a lot of people. Don't just listen to me, to Michael, or listen to a lot of people and then use it so you can form your own opinion. But the last thing you can do is ignore it. That's not a solution. And also, I think we have a responsibility towards our clients in order to make sure our business will there when we are no longer there. Doesn't matter for what reason you're no longer there. And that's what we should be thinking about. If you think about your clients, suddenly it's not about us anymore. So now like maybe I should do this. Yeah, that's my final thought.
Great. To everyone from my side, the short is I think experiment, and also please reach out. I'd love to hear what anyone's trying or anyone's doing. I think take that incremental steps with your tech stack, and then that'll hopefully free you up or start to allow you that more time to go and engage with your clients. Francois, thank you very much for joining us here today. I really enjoyed the session. To all the viewers and out there today, thank you very much for joining us. We will hopefully have some new and exciting stuff in the new year. But for all of those of you on the line, I'm wishing you all the best for the rest of the year. And thank you for joining this series. Thanks, Francois.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everyone.
INN8 is a registered trademark of Stanlib Wealth Management Pty Limited, an authorized financial services provider.